Okay, we're going to call the meeting of the Gloucester City Council for Tuesday, October 23rd to order. And I keep forgetting to say this, but I'll say it now, that the proceedings are audio and video taped. And we will begin with our flag salute and the moment of silence. So, Jamie, will you lead us in the flag salute, please? Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands. Could you tell us about the moment of silence, Jamie? Oh, Steve?
Yes.
Okay.
I'd like to dedicate this evening's moment of silence to Donnie Peavy. Donnie was a longtime worker for the City of Gloucester, the DPW. He was a very close friend of mine, an Ward 3 resident. I'm sure that anybody who knows Donnie has been touched by his generosity and his outpouring of love in everything Gloucester. I want to keep it short. I could talk for an hour about Donnie because I've known Donnie 30 plus years. But I just want to make sure that we take this evening and remember him and his family going through a tough time with his passing. So, Donnie, we miss you, bud.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Councilor LeBlanc, very eloquent. Next item.
Next
Madam
item
Clerk.
is oral communications.
Public shall have the opportunity at every regularly scheduled meeting to be heard under oral communications on matters not appearing on the agenda. Oral communication shall allow any resident who has a request or complaint of any nature relative to city business to appear before the council, state their problem without debate, and the matter shall be referred to the proper agency through the office of the mayor. The resident will be notified within a 2-week period relative to the disposition of same, and a copy shall be forwarded to the City Council. Persons speaking under oral communication shall be limited to 3 minutes each. Council President shall not allow complaints as to individual performance. So with that, anyone wishing to speak for oral communication? Welcome, Councilor Orlando. It's good to see you.
Thank you. My name's Joey.
And this is my daddy.
This is my daddy.
I promised him he could do that. Thank you. Council, Mr. President, I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you tonight. I understand the demands on your time every day because I've sat in that seat and I understand the role. I am here to bring some concerns from some constituents that have come to me as the person who was a point person on an issue in the last council, namely the affordable housing amendments we made to the zoning ordinance by 9-0 vote August of last year. So the reason I came before you is that there seems to be some confusion between the building department and the ZBA as to who is responsible for this zoning ordinance and who's responsible for administering it, specifically the amendments we made about affordable housing and illegal or improperly zoned units that we're trying to bring up to code and make safer and the like. I know we all agree, because there's been plenty of debate about it, that affordable housing is very important in this community. We need it. We need to increase the stock to meet our numbers by 2020, the best I can recall. But 3 different people have come to me, called my office, come visit me at my office to help them guide or navigate the way through trying to get their unit to be made affordable under our zoning ordinance, which is 5.30 and 5.31. It became official as of, I believe, September 22nd of last year, and there's a 3-year sunset clause on it. Before I left the council, I had recruited somebody who was interested at the time in being the zoning administrator, who was a former fire inspector. So we had the qualifications and submitted his resume and a statement of interest to the Zoning Board of Appeals, as far as I know. And nothing was ever done with that, to my knowledge. So I have sent people to the ZBA to discuss with Mr. Gardner, the chairman, what is required of them. They have come back to me and said he doesn't know what we're talking about. I have said, okay, we'll try the building department, and the building department does know what we did as a council, but has been unable to guide them through the process as well. It is not a complaint at all about individual performance, but this is 3 people that have done it, and I don't want us to lose as a city valuable affordable housing units because of the communication problems. I don't believe that my service to the community stopped when I didn't win re-election, so I'm here to offer my services to educate the public. If somebody would want to put together some kind of an educational night, we can bring all the departments together, and I will definitely give a presentation on what we did and what they have to do to meet the requirements of this ordinance. I'm a problem solver, not a problem raiser, so please use my time and my experience over the 8 months that we negotiated this series of amendments to help. I know we can all agree that this is an important topic. Every time there's a development that comes in front of the council, we rightfully ask the questions of how many units of those are going to be affordable, and that's an important topic, but this is an opportunity to get affordable housing units without having to negotiate them, without having to fight about them, without having to worry about payments in lieu. This is people coming to you saying, I want my unit to be affordable. So I leave it in the hands of the council and the administration. I've offered my services and time. You all have my number. Please don't be afraid to call me. I'll volunteer my time for an evening to come here to, if you all advertise it, and I'll educate everyone on what we attempted to do and how we can do it and get it done. I'd hate to see the 3-year sunset clause come up and no affordable housing units be kept when at least 3, to my knowledge, have come forward to try. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Joe, and we will not let that drop. We will pursue that. Anyone else for oral communication?
See you, Joey.
Bye, Joey. Thanks for coming. Name and address, please.
Karen Spencer, 67 Langsford Street. As an analyst, one part of my job is due diligence, deep dive discovery. Another is risk assessment. In the 1940s, fluoridationists promised that the only ill effect from fluoridation would be no more than 10% of the population might have a few barely noticeable white specks on their teeth. However, the benefit would be a huge reduction in cavities. If I was doing that risk assessment based on that information, I'd say fluoridation was a good idea. It took only a few years before the Public Health Service knew they had made a mistake. Not only did memos from Grand Rapids document that 15% of white children and 35% of black children had dental fluorosis, a controlled dose study on pregnant women and young children documented that some of the children had coppery brown stains on their teeth and that at least 1% of the test subjects had to be dropped from the study because of immediate acute reactions that included rashes, gastrointestinal upset, and neurological symptoms. Symptoms confirmed by blinded follow-up. Those researchers advised the Public Health Service that a percentage of the allergic population would be hard-pressed to avoid significant and serious illness in fluoridated communities. The Public Health Service canceled further funding for those researchers. Those findings should have canceled fluoridation policy. The promised reduction of cavities is not a greater public good when compared to any significant dental damage or debilitating whole health harm, as documented in the 1950s. I emailed this council full copies of 3 studies from that era last January, with highlights. I also emailed you a large 2003 Head Start study from California that looked at ethnicity and cavity experience. Ironically, an ADA fluoridation spokesman was one of the co-authors. I'm sure it was over his objections that the Head Start study mentioned more than once that community fluoridation status made no difference in cavity experience. Ethnicity, diet, and habits like putting kids to bed with bottles of milk or juice made a difference, but not community fluoridation. Counselors, one of the reasons fluoridationists loudly deny scientific evidence of harm is because anyone who knows anything about risk assessment knows that there is no justification for saying that people with inflammatory immune system, thyroid, or kidney disease need to cope with this optional water additive because it might prevent a few cavities in poor kids, let alone that pregnant women should assume an increased risk of neurological harm for their babies. Fluoridation is not a good idea. Fluoridation does not serve the greater good, balance public good, or provide social justice. There is no risk assessment for this optional program that justifies decades of chronic illness or a lifetime of disability in any Gloucester resident, period.
Thank you. Anyone else for oral communication? Our next item of business, Madam Clerk.
Next item is the first presentation. It's a presentation from the administration, Police Chief McCarthy, and the Library Director, Deborah Kelsey.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Destino and Ms. Kelsey and Chief McCarthy for coming at our invitation. We really appreciate that. And our goal, as I've said to all three of you individually, is to see what we can do to help with the problem of secure access to the library that was highlighted in a very unfortunate way with the incident 2 weeks ago. And the fact that the police report said that this is this is a frequent event in the area of the library, and so we want to figure out what we can do to help this situation. So, Mr. Destino, I'll turn it over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the City Council, Jim Destino, the Mayor's Office. Thank you for providing us with this opportunity to speak to you generally about the security measures at place at the Sawyer Free Library. However, if you want to speak specifics, I would suggest we do that in executive session, as we do not want to advertise public safety measures and strategies because of the simple fact that it could compromise security. Mr. President, the Mayor appreciates the Council's willingness to provide any input and resources necessary to assist us with this issue, but I can assure you that we have been working on this daily. Admittedly, some of the solutions may require new thinking and different approaches. We have engaged in ongoing partnerships with our police department, social services, mental health and substance abuse counselors. We are engaged in ongoing with city unions, city attorney, the library board, and even our human resources department. To be clear, this administration takes this issue seriously, and we continue to work very hard to ensure that it is responsibly and adequately addressed. While Sawyer Free Library does have its security challenges from a physical standpoint, our library is a safe place. Library directors and staffers all over the country in all types of libraries continue to be concerned about people who sometimes adversely affect the delivery of library services, including people who are homeless, people who have mental illness, or people who suffer from substance abuse. You will hear tonight from our police chief on the measures in place at the library and the success we have had as a result of those measures. From everyday property checks and walkthroughs to the training of our library staff to video surveillance, which was key in apprehending the two men the council president just, that you read about in the newspaper that just mentioned. You also will hear from the board of directors of the Sawyer Free Library. I cannot say enough about John Brennan, the new chairperson, and the rest of the directors of the library. Their understanding of the problems that face libraries today and their willingness to support different ideas, both in concept and in financial practice, is truly admirable. They are a great partner with this administration, and they will give another higher level view of the security strategies going forward. The mayor's goal for library security is the same as every city councilor, every board of director of the library, every resident and visitor who visit our historic library. Provide a safe and secure environment for staff and patrons who want to make use of that space. This is our mission. We continue to work hard on it, and we will succeed. We're here to answer questions, Mr. President, after the full presentation, I hope, if you allow John and John to both speak. So without anything further, I'll introduce the Chief of Police.
Thank you, and I should have said at the beginning, this is a presentation by the invited guests with counselor questions afterwards. So if counselors can hold their questions until Chief McCarthy and the library have spoken, and then we'll have questions. Chief McCarthy, welcome. Thank you for coming. And let me say one more thing. I've spoken to all the counselors about this situation in general, and to a person, we are so appreciative and supportive of the difficult situation that both the police and the library staff are confronted with in this matter. We understand that this has huge ramifications, and what the police and what the library staff have done so far has really been admirable, and we just want to make sure you understand that right up front. So thank you. Go ahead, Chief.
When you invited me, did you know the Red Sox were playing tonight? I was invited to talk about the recent incident that happened that made the newspaper not once, not twice, but 3 times. I thought the story was adequately covered the first time, but they kept writing about it. So I'll explain it in generalities. The case is still pending before the district court, so I cannot be specific in the case itself. However, someone went into the library. They asked for a key to the restroom. The librarian that issued the key, or the library employee that issued the key, was a little suspicious. She used the surveillance system that the library has in place and noticed that 2 people were now going into the men's room. She called the police. The police arrived. They made 2 arrests, seized some drugs, and part of their report included that there had been previous drug activity at the library, and that lent to the credibility of their arrest for that night. And that's about really all I can say about the event, other than I commend the library employee who, hopefully through training, we've done several trainings with the library staff. They've done training on their own, but she recognized that this could be something that wasn't normal. She did a great job. She followed them. She met our guys at the door. We were able to get into the bathroom. We were able to make the arrest and take 2 guys off the street that were conducting what we allege to be illegal activity in the Sawyer Free Library. We have had issues with the library, or the library has had issues, as has every library around the country. They are open to the public. They're a warm environment when it gets cold. It's inherent that they're going to have some issues. We've had several meetings with the library staff over the last couple of years. I handed out some spreadsheets that the council has, and we'll go over those in a minute. The important thing to note is on those spreadsheets, it will show 191 times that we documented over the last 22 months visiting the library, police visits to the library. 112 of those visits were preemptive walkthroughs by our officers directed by my administration. When we start having problems, we have an electronic bulletin board and a manual bulletin board. It's read off 3 times a day to 3 different shifts, although the library really only falls under 2 shifts and 1 shift most of the time, the day watch. When we start getting into cold weather, we'll instruct the cruiser to park at the library and walk through, talk to people. Just a presence in the library, we hope, defers any illegal activity. But you'll see that there's 112 entries on your spreadsheet, and they're instructed to walk through 3 times during that shift. So that would be 300 odd walkthroughs if they had the time to do that during their shift. Another important note on that spreadsheet you have is, if you look at the last page, there's a bar graph. There were 79 other calls for service at the library over the last 22 months. If you can look down through what we have there, There wasn't a lot of serious crime at the library. There was a lot of disruptive behavior. There was drug activity. We had 2 drug overdoses over the last 22 months at the library. We had, if you look at it, there's 10 burglar alarms, and those were all, I believe, those were all false alarms, or the alarm going off when someone entered the building that was lawfully there. I don't remember any breaks into the building. There were, I think, 5 arrests made at the library. On that graph, you'll see of concern hypodermic needle pickups, but that's not just the library. We pick hypodermic needles up all around the city. It's a problem. We're working with all the agencies that may have some influence on this. We pick them up on the beaches, in our parks. It shouldn't be just considered a problem that's at the library. However, it is a concerning problem anywhere we pick these up. The library, new wing, I call it new wing, but it's been there for, I think, somewhere around 40 years. The environment was a little different when they built that. I think in today's world, you would never have the main restrooms on the lower level with the children's room right alongside. So that's the first thing. When we look at a police problem, that's the first thing we look at is environmental. How could that be changed? And that would be one thing that myself and Jim Destino walked over there after you asked us to attend this meeting, and we looked around and we said, that's one thing that, might be a possibility later on. There are some other things that we don't want to get too specific on, but just changing hallways, doors, partitioning off, changing a doorway. There are some things that may environmentally be able to help. We think we're doing a good job. We have a great rapport with the library staff. We've had, like I say, several trainings with them. We have the Grace Center in Gloucester, which is a great help to the library, believe it or not, because it's open 6 days a week now. So a lot of the people that would ordinarily be going into the library are going to the Grace Center. The one problem day that we identified was Saturdays in the cold weather. So we increased patrols on some of the Saturdays. I actually would take a walk if I was downtown through the library myself on a Saturday, just to try to keep a presence in the library on those days. I believe the library now has required, and I'll let them explain, that they have to have a library card to get the restroom key, which is a good measure going forward. I think, looking at these numbers, short of the police station being manned 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and me having school resource officers in the school, I think as for public buildings, the library gets more police attention than any other building in the city. I think we've worked well with the library staff to try to minimize disruption in the library. And going forward, we're willing to work with whatever tools are in our disposal to try to even further minimize this disruption. But you might take into account, and I don't want to name businesses or anything, but we have these problems in other places around the city, in restrooms and other places. It's not unique to the library. Unfortunately, it's a culture that people use drugs and they go into a place that's secluded, and if they don't have a place, if they're homeless or if it's more convenient for them, they do use these places. So it's something we try to stay on. We try to do preventative patrols, as we've done at the library, and we welcome any input going forward that might help us do our job better. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chief. Appreciate that. John, you want to speak? Thank you so much for coming. Appreciate that.
My pleasure. So, Mr. President,
Identify
Councilors-
yourself for Dana.
What's that? Sure. I'm John Brennan. I'm president of the Board of Trustees for the Sawyer Free Library. So I'm coming tonight just to sort of talk about what our board is doing with some of the challenges the library is facing. And fundamentally what we're doing is we realize our building is inadequate. We are looking to rehabilitate, rebuild, recreate the library. We're essentially at war with it, which I know is a strong term, but we realize that one of the issues we have is the structure and the facility is dated, and with a more open design and with some, we could really recreate the space, which would be safer and eliminate some of the challenges that we're facing now. So I could speak at length about that. Obviously, that's involved. We have been awarded a grant from the Mass Board of Library Commissioners, 40% matching a grant for a new facility, which means we have $9 million on the table. So what we've been working towards is a design, a project, and fundraising for the rest of those funds, which would bring us a new library, okay? The other thing I'll say is that I was in the library the evening this incident took place. I was in a meeting in the front room right downstairs, and you would never know that something of this nature took place. There are a few police in the hallway, but everything was quiet, professional, and dealt with very efficiently. I don't know if you have any specific questions for me.
We may have, but thank you. And do you have anything else from the library on this matter?
Well, we are looking at security. We are working on security. One of the things that we have is, we've talked on the board level about we want to make sure the library is a safe place for everyone. So, as we've had a great partnership with the city, and as Mr. Destino said, we are working on something to keep that trend line moving up and keep the property safer.
Thank you. Anybody else, Mr. Destino, that is going to speak at our? Okay. So then, councilors, any questions for the library or the police or the administration? Councilor Cox, we'll start with you.
Thank you. One of the things that was mentioned was to not give out the bathroom key unless you had a library card. I'm not a big fan of that, only because there are some people that may need the facilities that are not causing a problem within the library that don't necessarily have a local address and may be staying at the shelter or need a place to stay during the day. So I don't know that they necessarily would have a library card, but I don't want to punish everybody for a few bad apples.
May I respond? Deborah Kelsey, Library Director. Anyone may have a library card. We have two forms of cards, cards for borrowing and cards for using the library facilities. So there's not a barrier there. Anyone can have one.
When I went and got a library card, I had to prove residency, so that's what I'm basing my knowledge on. So,
because you are an active borrower, that's why. We have a whole nother system for people who we cannot verify their address.
Councilor Holmgren.
Thank you, everyone, for coming. I'm not exactly sure who to address this question to, but I do want to say that, of course, we all know people who are using or dealing drugs at the library are clearly in a desperate situation. And not only does this present a security issue, but it highlights an underlying problem. People use drugs for many, many reasons, and it's important to approach the challenges they present holistically, considering the whole person, no matter how they present. And I know Mr. Destino has talked about the administration working with Leahy Health. I would like to ask the administration or the library board, whoever is more appropriate, to consider embedding a social worker at the library, maybe in conjunction with Leahy Health, if that will help offset the cost to help with situations like this going forward. The library staff and the Gloucester Police have done an incredible job. They have gone far beyond the call of duty many, many times, clearly. And as it is all over the country now, they've kind of become deputized social workers in this situation. And it would be wonderful if they got this kind of support as well, never mind the people who are in the bathrooms. So I'm not sure who to address that question to, but I'd like the administration at least to consider embedding a social worker.
Thank you, Counselor. Other questions? So I have a question, and I'll start with John Brennan, please. John, do you want to? So my question is, yes, all of and I understand the reticence to get too deep into the security issues as they are in a planning stage. However, the idea that we are going to solve the structural issues of the library by building a new library is very lofty and very far off. What can we do tomorrow to fix the structural issues that allow for this kind of behavior so that we are not putting our library staff or our police in the very difficult situation of having to police illegal activity that the building often encourages? What are our plans for a structural fix, and how much is it going to cost, and how can the city help you? That's my question.
Okay. So we have, as a board, approved private security for the library, because one of the things that we have pondered was the idea that the problems that are present at the library would follow us to a new building, and it would sort of be a detriment. It would be we'd starting out with it would just be a bad start. So we have funds for private security, which we are going to try and get online in a matter of weeks here. What I would say from the council is, come next budget season, we have a lot of obligations. We're fighting a lot of battles as a board in a lot of different areas. We're trying to put together a package that's appealing to all residents of the city, which they'd support from a fundraising perspective. We're working on our governance. We're working on security. So come next budget season, if there was support from the city or the city council to help us defer some of these costs, that would be helpful.
Sure. Again, next budget season is, 9 months away.
Yep.
The problem exists today, and so the question is, what plans do we have today? And if you don't have plans, we'd like to know that as well. What plans do we have to harden the structure of the library so that the accessibility for this kind of activity in the basement next to the children's room is made more difficult? What plans do we have? And if we don't have plans, say so, and we would like to know what we can do to help you get them. And if it's a question of cost, and I've heard this a couple of times, well, we have some plans, but it costs too much, and therefore we can't do it. That's not a good answer. The good answer is, here's what we, the library professionals, would like to do with our building right now, and here's what it costs. You, city council, and mayor, help us pay for this. That's what we'd like to hear.
Okay. Well, what I would say on that is changes were made, policies were changed following this incident. And then, Deb, do you want to speak on this at all?
We've been going through a 4-year, since I became your library director 4.5 years ago, we've been in a long process of discernment. It took me a couple of months to realize that we have that security and safety is our primary concern and has to be addressed. We have spent countless hours looking at our facility, consulting with almost every department of the city to try and understand what could be done with what we have in place and what is literally feasible to do. We've had multiple architectural teams come in to look at how we could work on different access to the building, what we could block off, what we can put surveillance systems in, you name it. We've looked at it. We've looked at how we could relocate restrooms. We've looked at how we could get traffic to circulate through the building differently. We've looked at relocating children's services. We've explored this pretty much every which way. After that very first kind of baptism of understanding where we are, that's what led to writing a building program and going through a preliminary design phase to get this city the library that it actually needs. And that was the process that we have been going through. The proposed design was not met positively by the community, I think mostly for aesthetic reasons. And we have now had to readjust what our approach has been. We are back evaluating, can we renovate the current facility and use it? What are we going to do with our historic house? And how are we going to deliver services? So these continue to be the major factors. Those are all about our physical facility. You've heard a lot about, we have undergone extensive training over the last 2 years in particular, which I have to say, I really do feel that the staff are the heroes of this story at this moment, and they work under incredibly tough conditions over there. So we double staff every public service position. We are trying to be vigilant. The police are incredibly responsive to our calls. And what could we do in this moment? So we have often talked about building more restrooms in other areas of the building. That is feasible, but it means that we would be diminishing the actual square footage that is currently too little for the city to house the other programs and services. It's going to be costly, and we're trying to move forward to actually build a facility that's going to work, because it's fundamentally not a functional space. So yes, we are opening our building every day with a hope that we are not going to have a disaster. That's the truth. And we are doing our best to provide the city with what they need. And we have to make the leap into actually fixing this building, which means we can't just Band-Aid it. We can't lock a door. We've locked one of the 3 entrances. We've changed the way we are functioning with delivering the keys for the restrooms. We have been in active conversation as to whether or not we're going to leave the restrooms open, and would that actually improve the situation or make it worse? We can't think through what the consequences might be, so we're a little bit reluctant to make that change. We don't have an accessible main entrance. We have limited parking. You name it. We're constrained everywhere we turn around. It's not going to be fixed because we move a wall, or we can spend the several $100,000 and put in restrooms. If that's the will of this group, then that's what we'll explore. But it won't happen within the near term. It takes time. Have I answered your question?
Other councilor questions? So it's not just the will of this group, it's the will of the city, which includes you and the library board and the mayor and the council. And our concern is that we are holding back remedies, because we're putting the library staff in a very difficult situation when we don't give them the facility that they need to run the library. And if there are fixes, we need to know about them, and we need to know what the cost is in a measured way, in a thoughtful way, and we would like to know sooner rather than later, and not just we'll wait till we build the new library. That's a long ways away.
It really isn't. we are where we started this process, we were in the middle of the pack of the communities that have an approved project, and we have moved up. We're probably 2 years away. If we are going to do a near-term fix, a temporary fix, it's going to take us a year to do that. So this has been the tension that's been involved in this whole process. I utterly agree with you. This is a community effort that's going to have to be put to, we all have to have a will to change this. But I do want to point out that the city administration has been absolutely behind us, and we have been working in lockstep to try to resolve as much as we possibly can. So this isn't as if this is not on the minds of everyone and that we aren't making every effort. We are. So if there is, who knows, from this meeting we may feel like there's a charge of something that we actually can do that isn't just fix what there is. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Anybody else? I'm sure I speak for all of us. Oh, Jamie, go ahead. Sorry, Councilor O'Hara.
Thank you. I just more a comment. This issue that we're here talking about right now obviously is not a problem just in Gloucester. It's countrywide, as we know. Discussing it tonight, there's always room for improvements, but it's an illness. These two gentlemen that were unfortunately, or that were a part of this, they weren't, when they came into this world, they weren't, if you will, addicts or a dealer. It's a problem that we have countrywide. I think our police department is doing an admirable job. We're not going to stop it. It's going to continue. We bolt the doors shut. This will take place someplace else. As I discussed with our council president, I've spoken to reformed users. This is a part, they do their business in the public's eye. This is how it's conducted. We're not going to eliminate it. We can spend money, security guards. People, I've seen security guards, you can put a patrolman in there. It's going to continue. It's just, unfortunately, a part of our society today, and it's countrywide. We can all hope, I think the Gray Center, we have all kinds of programs to help these people. And you know, I myself am an employer. I've dealt with it as an employer. It's just unfortunate. You know, it's just an unfortunate part of our society. It's tough to prevent. We're not going to solve the problem tonight, and I don't care. You know, we can spend millions of dollars over there. It's still going to happen. It's going to happen. It's probably happened in this building. It's probably happened at the police station. It happens in our schools. It happens every place. And you know, as much as we talk about, I think our law enforcement is our best means. They know who's who in our city. We're an island. I think our chief's doing a wonderful job, and his patrolmen are out there as hard as they have so many issues to deal with in our city, as in all cities and towns. But I think spending isn't the cure. It's a countrywide problem. I think, you know, what took place that day, fortunately we had measures in place. I'm sure they're going to continue, and hopefully this won't happen again, but unfortunately, it's probably going to happen again. That's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor O'Hara. Anybody else? Again, we really appreciate your coming at our invitation to the mayor, to the library, and to the police. And just want to reiterate our profound gratitude to the library staff and to the police for handling this very difficult problem. And we are here to support you and back you up. So thank you. Madam Clerk, next order of business.
Next order of business is a presentation in regard to the municipal energy aggregation in Gloucester, and it would be John O'Rourke, Director of Marketing Northeast for Good Energy, and Greg Canamatore, Planning Director.
Welcome, Greg.
Good evening. I just wanted to say a couple of words just before John gets going with his presentation, and hopefully the computer will come up and we'll have it ready to go. So this is kind of a great culmination of something that began back in 2015 with present council, past city council being involved, and really with its origins with the outreach of the Department of Energy Resources and the Clean Energy Commission, and Candace Wheeler is here this evening, that was on the commission at the time, and Paul McGeary is here as well, current Clean Energy Commission member and past city council president. It's really been kind of a long road, and it's nice to see a project that has taken so long to come to fruition. The information that you're going to see this evening hopefully is a bit of a refresher. I think we've done a pretty good job of reaching out to as many people as we can through as many channels as we can. And I just also want to be clear that, you know, one of the challenges with a program like this is if you don't have a winning bid, there's really nothing to talk about. And as the council recalls, back in April of last year, we talked about whether or not we were going to be able to initiate the program at that time. The conditions weren't favorable, so we kind of wait until the next announcement of the national grid rates to kind of see if a bid is going to work. So it has been a little bit of a rush or a little bit of a catch-up to provide information to people if they hadn't been tracking this back from 2015 and the various steps that the city had to take to get to this point. And I'm also seeing that this isn't coming to life. So, oh wait, here we go. But John O'Rourke from Good Energy is kind of our guy. That's the boots on the ground at this point. He will also review, Jill, I'm going to need you to do that. He will also review the outreach that he'll be doing over the next week, which include a number of kind of office hours in this building, and also just kind of give you a sense of what the feedback has been like from the public. I can tell you our offices have fielded a number of calls as well, probably more than 100, and Jeremy Price, who works in my office, has done an excellent job in mostly converting people to want to participate into the program or alerting them to their options if they do choose to opt out of the program. But I think it's been very successful. Again, I'll let John kind of cover the high points of the program, but we will continue to have outreach and field any questions of the public. So please send them to the channels that you've been notified through the website or through the phone numbers that are available through Good Energy or Direct Energy. And I'll let John take it from there.
Thank you, Greg. Mr. President, council members, thank you for letting me appear before you tonight. My name again is John O'Rourke. The company name is Good Energy. We're the aggregation consultants for the Gloucester Community Electricity Aggregation. First of all, Stefano sends his regrets and apologies. He woke up this morning with a very sick, and he asked me to cover both his afternoon question and answer session and tonight's council meeting. What I want to do is just give you a brief update. I know I was here 2 weeks ago before you. I just want to let you know how things are going with the public outreach and how the plan is coming together. As you know, the aggregation supplier is Direct Energy, and the contract that was chosen by the city, which was the most advantageous, is a 3-year contract that starts on the December meter read and goes out to the December 21st, 2021 meter read. Again, the three options, the standard, or what is called the default option, has an additional 5% local renewable energy, which is coming from the Blackburn wind turbines, and that's a little over 11 cents. The basic option, and this is an option that people can fall back on if they don't want any more renewable energy than is required by the Renewable Portfolio Standard. That's a little over 10 cents. That's per kilowatt hour. And the premium local green, which is 100% renewable energy, is just a little over 13 cents per kilowatt hour. You'll note that the national grid rate as of November the 1st is going up to 13.7 cents per kilowatt hour. And again, the program launches with the December meter read date for Gloucester residents and businesses who are presently on the basic service of National Grid. Any questions? The number to call for Good Energy is 866-456-8232. A little later in the presentation, I'll go over how the calls are coming in and how they're being handled. If someone didn't receive an opt-out letter, that probably means they're not on the basic service of National Grid. We've gotten a number of those questions from people as to why they didn't receive a letter. And when we ask them to look at their bill, they think they're under National Grid supply, but many of them were not. They're under a third-party supplier. To change program options, the number to call is Direct Energy, and that's 866-968-8065. That's either to join the program, to opt out of the program. If for some reason a resident or business didn't receive an opt-out card and they know they're with the basic service of National Grid, they can call Direct Energy and they can be taken off the program if they wish. The aggregation website has a lot of information on it, including some very good frequently asked questions. Many of your residents have gone to that site and found it very helpful. That's gloucester-cea.com. Has a lot of program details, and it has a list of the public events that are coming up that I will go over as well. The website will be updated with opt-out letters translated into Spanish, Portuguese, and Italian by next week at this time. The opt-out period ends November the 14th, but you can opt out any time after that. Essentially, in the beginning of the program, there's a required 30-day formal opt-out period under the law, and that's why it's a set length of time. But essentially, after that November 14th date, anyone can opt out at any time without penalty or a termination fee. These are the presentations we've done so far. Again, Tuesday, October the 9th, I was here before the council. Thursday, the 18th, I was at the Sawyer Free Public Library at the flu clinic to answer any questions the residents had. Again, that afternoon, I was at the Gloucester City Hall in this room, as a matter of fact, answering questions for residents. On this past Sunday, I came up to do a podcast with Good Morning Gloucester, a very interesting event, and I think it went very well, and we got a lot of good information out there for anyone who wants to listen to that podcast. Again, today, this afternoon, I did a Q&A downstairs in the conference room for residents that came by. This Thursday, I'll be at the Senior Center to discuss the program from 10:45 to 12 p.m. Thursday afternoon, I will also be doing a question and answer forum for residents that want to come. And Friday, I'll be again at the Senior Center for bingo with the mayor and answer any questions that anybody has. Again, our whole purpose is to reach out to as many residents as possible, to field their calls, to make sure all their questions are answered. In the first 6 days since the letters were received, we've gotten 123 calls, and essentially all of those have been handled. You'll note that on the 16th there's a little less than 100%, and on the 19th there's a little less than 100%. In both those cases, those were hang-up calls, so they could not be handled. And the way these actions were taken on those calls, there were 37 that wanted to be in the basic program, 2 that wanted the standard or default program. There were 2 that opted into basic from other programs. 1 that opted into the basic program, 1 that opted into default. There were 24 opt-outs, and there were 16 that wanted to go into the premium. There were 12,900 letters sent out. So with 123 phone calls, that's a little less than 1%, which is an excellent rate for the start of the program. Usually in the first couple of weeks of an aggregation, after it's started and the letters go out, there's a lot of calls. Sometimes there's a little confusion, there's some misinformation, or people just don't know what to do. We field those calls, and essentially what happens is after those first 2 weeks, things calm down because now the word has gotten out sufficiently and people understand what's going on. This is just the landing page of the GloucesterCEA.com website. And again, there's a lot of program details and a lot of frequently asked questions on here. If residents don't want to make a phone call, they can go to the site. Again, we're always available to answer questions. Again, this is the opt-out letter. As you can see, this is a very detailed letter. It's a letter that's required by the Department of Public Utilities. And some of the questions or comments we got on calls were, boy, I just don't understand this letter. And you know, I don't blame them because there's a lot of detail in this letter. There's a lot of small print, but it's a letter that we have to put out because it complies with the Department of Public Utilities requirements. Again, we're always available to answer questions, and you know, certainly I think in the next couple of weeks, as I say, things are going to calm down significantly as residents understand the program a little better.
Great. Thank you very much, John. So, councilors, do we have any questions? I mean, I have one question, and sure. It's just because people ask me, they say, well, so what does this mean for me, the program? Mm-hmm. So here's what I've said, and if I've been wrong, correct me. So the National Grid winter rate is 13 cents kilowatt hour, and you were able to get us, let's say, 10 cents. Mm-hmm. And so for community aggregation, that means we can save 3 cents a kilowatt hour. And if we, I don't know what the average user uses in a month, but say it's 500 hours, that's $15 a month. That this program, it will save the average consumer $15 a month for the next 6 months, anyway, until National Grid is reset, mm-hmm. and then it's kind of, you have to re-examine. But at the beginning, am I stating it correctly, that that's what happens with aggregation, that we as consumers are going to save some amount of money as compared to what National Grid's rate is for December 1st?
That's correct. And essentially, we use an annual rate of about 7,500 kilowatt hours, which comes out to about 625 kilowatt hours a month. Okay, and essentially, the program should save people. We try to get in between 10 and 12% savings on that supply portion. And essentially, what it does, it keeps people in a fixed rate for a longer time, so they don't have the up and down of the National Grid rates varying. It also helps stop some of those unscrupulous phone calls that people get and mailings that people get. Also, again, there's more green in it, which is an environmental win. So we try to have both an economic and environmental win with these programs. And so far in Massachusetts, every one of our aggregations has saved money.
Okay, Councilor Gilman?
Thank you, Mr. O'Rourke, for your assistance in all this. And I really enjoyed the video. The 7-minute video with Candace, Paul, and John was excellent. I've sent that out to quite a few constituents.
That was a first take. We didn't require a second take for that.
Well, you were really smooth because I didn't even hear filler words and ahs, so it was very good, so thank you. My question is one that's come up that I don't know the answer for, and I haven't seen the material covered on your website. If in some of our low-income housing, if people if they already have a discounted rate, are they going to get a bill? And if so, if they don't fill out the opt-out, would that give them therefore a higher rate than they're receiving as a low-income rate? So that's a question I just didn't know what the answer was.
All discount programs stay in place. Okay, with National Grid, there's no effect.
Anybody else? Well, great. Well, thank you so much, John, for coming back. We appreciate that, and Greg and Jill for having him back, and Candace and Paul for spearheading this. We really appreciate it. I think this is going to turn out to be a good program. We can get over the information hump.
Great. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you. Thank you. Madam Clerk, next item of business.
Next item is the consent agenda.
Is the consent agenda, any councilors want to remove anything from the consent agenda or the unanimous consent calendar? Good. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Thank you. Next order of business, Madam Clerk.
Next order of business is the Budget and Finance Standing Committee report of October 18th.
Councilor Cox.
Thank you very much. Let's see. Budget and Finance voted unanimously to recommend that the City Council approve Supplemental Appropriation 2019 SA7 in the amount of $518 from the City Clerk dog license receipts reserved for Appropriation Fund, transfers to the General Fund account as noted, to City Clerk other expense account as noted for the purpose of funding the purchase of an additional city seal. And I so move.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Comment?
This appropriation is to purchase an additional new city seal. I'm sure you guys have all received a document with that raised seal. It's a rather necessary item, and right now I believe they're down to one and ordering another one so multiple people can do it at the same time and as for a backup.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Since this is a supplemental appropriation, it's a roll call vote.
Councilor Cox?
Yes.
Councilor Gilman?
Yes.
Councilor Holmgren? Yes. Councilor Blank?
Yes.
Councilor Lundberg?
Yes.
Councilor Memhard?
Yes.
Councilor Nolan? Yes. Councilor O'Hara?
Yes.
Supplemental appropriation 2019 SA7 in the amount of $518 passes on a vote of 8 in favor, 0 opposed, and 1 absent.
Councilor Cox.
Budget and Finance voted unanimously to recommend that the City Council approve Supplemental Appropriation 2019 SA8 in the amount of $586 from the City Clerk dog license receipt reserved for Appropriation Fund, transfer to the General Fund account as noted, to City Clerk other expense account as noted for the purpose of funding the purchase of a desktop inkjet printer. And I so move.
Second.
Moved and seconded.
Basically, this purchase is going to replace a typewriter. I'm not sure if you guys all know what that is, but it's this thing where you manually, anyway, so, yeah, we're retiring the typewriter.
Great. That's a roll call, too. Supplemental. Go ahead.
Councilor Cox?
Yes.
Counselor Gilman?
Yes.
Counselor Holgren? Yes. Counselor Blank?
Yes.
Counselor Ellenberg?
Yes.
Counselor Memhard? Yes. Counselor Nolan?
Yes.
Counselor O'Hara?
Yes.
Supplemental appropriation 2019 SA 8 in the amount of $586 passes on a vote of 8 in favor, 0 opposed, and 1 absent.
Next item, Councilor Cox.
Budget and Finance voted unanimously to recommend that the City Council accept under Mass General Law, Chapter 44, Section 53A, a federal grant from the Institute of Museum and Library Science Services passed through the Massachusetts Libraries Board of Library Commissioners FY19 LSTA grant, conserving and digitizing historical resources for the total of $30,000 for the purpose of conserving and digitizing 7 of the City of Gloucester's oldest bound volumes of city records. The grant period is from October 1st, 2018 to September 30th, 2019. There is no local match required for the grant. Can I so move?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Pretty self-explanatory.
Yes.
Okay. And this is an acceptance of a grant, so it's just a simple majority. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Madam Clerk, thank you very much, Councilor Cox. Madam Clerk, next order of business.
Next order of business is the Planning and Development Standing Committee report of October 7th.
No issues to report. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, next order of business.
Next order of business is public hearing 2018-052 to amend the Gloucester Code of Ordinances, Chapter 28, marijuana retail establishments by adding a new section 28-2, prohibited practices.
This is a public hearing. I'll open the public hearing and ask if there's anyone who wishes to speak in favor of the amendment. Anybody wishing is opposed to speaking in opposition? Madam Clerk, do we have any communications?
Yes, there was one communication we received by email, which I distributed to all the councilors, from Kathy Tara of 18 Timberview Road, who is not in favor of the amendment.
Thank you. Any councilor questions about the technicalities? Well, I asked if anybody to speak in favor or in opposition.
I say let him speak.
Okay, well, come forward and ask your question. Name and address, please. Wait till you get to the microphone. Now,
my name's Tom Denman. I live at 2 Cross Street here in Gloucester, and I don't have any objection at all as far as there being prohibited practices. I realize in the industry some stupid things can be done, but it would be nice to know what those proposed prohibited practices are, because I couldn't find anything in the communication going out regarding this ordinance, what that is. Is that something, to be determined later, or?
We will get to that when we read the committee report, which will have the ordinance in it. It is, in general, it is to prohibit public displays of paraphernalia used for marijuana ingestion.
Okay.
And when we get to the committee report, Councilor LeBlanc will read the...
That's fine.
So.
Okay, I just couldn't find it anywhere.
Understood. Thank you very much, Tom. Okay. Anybody else have a question or a comment? Oh. Name and address, please, for the record.
Paul Bruce, 156 East Main Street.
Are we having a question?
No, I'm just in favor.
Oh, thank you.
Like to.
Okay, he might have missed it, so
yeah.
In favor.
Paul Bruce, 156 East Main Street. So my statement is, as somebody who has young kids, at eye level, advertisements for things that promote the use of these products is reprehensible, and amongst other things in other scopes with substances, I think this is a clear place where we can draw a line to simply say it's unacceptable to be able to promote these things and make it the norm around here. People know where to get what they want and what they need to get when they need to get it. We don't need to advertise these things. I've had conversations with the storefront owners. Not all of the business owners think the same way, particularly those on Main Street. I've had conversations with that business owner who doesn't even live in Gloucester, so doesn't reap the consequences to their young kids of what they necessarily put out in front of on our streets. So thank you, by the way, for letting me use your time today. Thank you.
Thank you for speaking. We appreciate that. Since we're a little out of order, anybody else want to say anything about this matter? Okay. In that case, we will close the public hearing and call for the committee report. Councilor LeBlanc.
Thank you. Ordinance and Administration voted unanimously to recommend that the City Council amend the Gloucester Code of Ordinances, Chapter 28, marijuana retail establishments by adding a new section 28-2, prohibited practices, as follows. Subsection A. In addition to the requirements of 935 Code of Massachusetts Regulations 500, specifically 935 Code of Massachusetts Regulations 500.105, subsection 4, subsection B, prohibited practices, it shall be unlawful for any person to operate an establishment so as to clearly display any marijuana advertising products, paraphernalia, or accessories so that is visible to a person from the exterior of the establishment. This includes any of the same that have multiple uses, of which one is for marijuana. Section B. This section may be enforced by any police officer through any lawful means, including non-criminal disposition pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 40, Sections 21D. The fine for violation shall be as follows. First fine would be $250 for the first offense, $500 for the second offense, and $1,000 for each offense thereafter. And I so move.
Second. Moved and seconded. Any commentary, Councilor?
Well, we've had several smoke shops come to Ordinance Administration over the past a little over a year, and we've kind of, extended an olive branch and said, kind of tone it down. We don't want to have a knee-jerk reaction and make them do something that they don't want to do. So that being said, I know there's several, there's one in particular that is kind of out in your face. We just voted the recreational marijuana law into effect last month or earlier this month, and then so this kind of goes hand in hand with that. So this will be into the Code of Ordinances. So therefore, if there was an establishment already in business, this would be retroactive and include them with this also, with the regulations that we just passed.
Thank you. Any Councilor comments? Councilor Cox.
So I'm really torn on supporting this or not supporting it. I find that this is now a legal business. It's a legal product. No different than cigarettes and alcohol, except for the fact that it's still federally illegal, whereas alcohol and cigarettes are legal if you're of age. As a child of two alcoholics, I find giant billboards and advertisements of alcohol and cigarettes equally distasteful. I don't know that it's really our role to determine what can and cannot be in a window of a private business. So as a parent, I am extremely concerned about what kids are seeing, and I believe the phrase you were looking for was lit up like Vegas for the one store that comes to mind. I don't like it, but I'm very torn on this whole as a parent, as a child of a substance abuse family. I don't see where we can regulate one legal product versus others and not do the others. So I don't know. I'm hoping that you can enlighten me a little bit more, because honestly, I just don't know which way to go.
Councilor LeBlanc?
Thank you. So this is fairly new to our city. It's happened all over the state. We're not the only ones that are doing this. For instance, I agree with the alcohol and tobacco, but us as city leaders, we have to protect what is visible to our children. And just, off the cuff, if we were to have a strip club come to town, I'm sure that we would have restrictions on what they can put in the window as to what they're advertising. I don't see this any different from protecting our children on what we want them to see. I know we have alcohol and tobacco inside our households that families use in front of their children. Hopefully we don't have people using marijuana products in front of their children. So this is just one step as us as city leaders protecting the children of our city on what we don't want them to see as an adult recreational use.
Councilor Holmgren?
I am echoing Councillor Cox's sentiments. I am also an adult child of an alcoholic. I have dealt with issues like this my entire life. I find the displays that we have around the city pertaining to any substances to be objectionable. I am concerned about them as a parent. They are, however, a part of our everyday life. I have seen alcohol kill people, whether it be by detoxing from it or through DUIs or chronic liver problems. Where do we draw the line? I appreciate Kathy Tarr's sentiment. I also appreciate the sentiment of the people who have spoken here tonight, who are in favor of us passing this. I am also I've been of two minds on this for a while now, so I'm going to need a little bit of help here myself.
Councilor Nolan?
Thank you. So on this matter, I'm not one for be taken away from people's rights and being able to run their businesses the way they will. The first smoke shop, as you would say, that popped into town became a lot of phone calls and a lot of concerns from a lot of people in the neighborhood, and people traveling back and forth to school, other towns coming in to play games, and it wasn't just one call or one email. It was a lot of people concerned about what we're showing people and how we react to it. The differences that I see is that this is something new. It's going to be legal for us. I don't like the idea of seeing the bongs in the windows and all the other paraphernalia. We did meet with some owners of the smoke shops back over a year ago in O&A, and we had asked them, if they could work with us and tone it down, and they obviously didn't. And the phone calls still keep coming in, people still complaining about something, and we had specifically, let them know, don't make us do an ordinance on this and restrict you. But I can see no other way to take away a problem that is concerning to so many residents as it is to support this bill tonight.
Thank you, Councilor. We'll go to Councilor Gilman for next.
So I've thought a lot about this. One of the reasons why I'm voting will be voting in support of this tonight is because a lot of the students at our high school are really upset about it. I mean, I think overall I've probably spoken to 20 or 30 students. They hate the impression it gives to people when they drive into town. They said that they've been teased by some of their opponents from other teams. They just feel like it's just out there in the main road of our community. And, you know, so I think if we have to address this as an ordinance, but at the same time, I also read Kathy Tarr's letter really closely, and she brought up some good points, but there's nothing stopping us from at a later date to maybe ask the administration to look at some other policies of what other communities have about restricting, you know, liquor signage, and just to see what else is out there and ask for a recommendation of what we could do with that ordinance. And maybe it could be done over time, so we're not really overwhelming the package stores with giving them all these new rules after they just bought these nice posters outside. But, you know, those things are a little bit overwhelming as well. But I think we have to keep moving forward with this. We've done everything that the community has asked us to do with the marijuana establishment zoning and ordinance, and I think we've made a lot of good decisions. This is just one small matter going forward. I understand that it creates some angst out there, but I have to listen to the kids at the high school, and you know, Caroline Enos and that whole group came forward, and they are so upset, not just about that one shop, but about all of the smoke shops as well. As upset about that as they are about, I think everyone knows here that, you know, there was a large group that really wanted one retail shop, and we all went with the 3, except for Jamie. You know, that was a big decision. It was a big decision for me because I wasn't in favor, but I listened to the people. But this is just one thing that I really think we need to look at closely with our youth. This is being, you know, these are products that our parents aren't up to speed with. Our parents are parents of the 70s and the 80s. They don't understand how these products are used. Our kids are using them, and we don't know it. We can't tell it. We can't smell it. We can't look at their eyes anymore. It's different, and they're driving. So for those reasons, I really think that it's best that they not be front and center in the window front across the board in our community, and I hope that the rest of the council think long and hard about this decision. But it is a tough one, and I do understand both sides. Thank you, Councilor.
Thank you, Councilor Gilman. Councilor O'Hara, did you want to say something?
Sure. Thank you. I agree with Councilor Gilman comments pertaining to the youth of our city. The high school students spoke, but I've heard it from younger O'Malley students that are just there. They see, you know, as Councilor LeBlanc and Councilor Nolan, we had. You know, as I said at O&A, and I'll say it tonight, the elephant in the room is the establishment on Washington Street at Centennial Ave. And the students, as Councilor Gilman had mentioned, the students see that every day, and they're torn. You know, they know what's right and they know what's wrong, but they see this in their face. And I think they're young, their minds can wander, their bodies aren't developed. That we need to protect the youth of our city, and however we can protect them, and I think this is a tool that we can utilize to hopefully keep them until they become of legal age from going down that road. So I will be supporting this tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Memhard.
I thought Councilor Gilman summarized my concerns very clearly in a broad picture of the constituencies that we represent here. I'm not sure at some point if there will be, in fact, some guidance coming through from the state relating to some of these. Obviously, it's still federally illegal. I think it's important to keep focused that this is for underage, that underage, unless you're an adult, you're not entitled to participate in these things. So you want to be careful that you're not targeting or encouraging people who aren't eligible to indulge. I'm concerned about how businesses will be legally able to advertise and display, for example, delivery trucks distributing in the city, representing marijuana products. In the same way that we have banners advertising different kinds of alcohol, even if it's the brewery, at a sporting event, at a festival at Stage Fort Park, at Harbor Loop. There are going to be repercussions that we need to filter through here. I'm very happy taking this first step and discouraging display of bongs in windows on main thoroughfares. I don't have any problem with that, but I think that there are going to be a flow of repercussions that we're going to have to fine-tune. And if it means putting some additional limits on display of other activity that we do limit to adults only, you know, I'm not in favor of government regulation in general, but there are certainly an appropriate line to follow here, and I think that we need to be mindful of what our constituents are concerned about.
Okay. This is now round two, so you want to start?
Yes, real quick.
Okay.
Just so the council knows that there is an ordinance that states how much signage you can put on your building for alcohol on the outside. I'm not sure the exact amount, but I did deal with the building inspector a couple years ago about a convenience store on my ward that it was just wall-to-wall alcohol, beer and, no, I don't want to say alcohol, but just beer and wine on the outside of the building, and he went over and asked them to take down to the legal limit what they're allowed to. So that is part of what we're trying to do here. So we've already established an ordinance that states the alcohol has to be toned down to a certain level. So, you know, this is just part of the horse and buggy here.
Councilor Holmgren?
So after hearing the rationales behind this, I will be supporting it tonight. I would like you all to know, in case you didn't, that my first paying job was as a tobacco prevention peer leader at the Gloucester Prevention Network. I was 15 years old. I spoke with the high schoolers myself. I haven't gone to them as many times as you have, Val, but I understand their concerns. They're valid. Back in 1995, I worked with people who worked on tobacco advertising to limit it, and I'm really glad that this conversation isn't over. I really do think that we need to keep a keen eye on all of these things, and I thank Councillor LeBlanc for asking the building inspector to enforce that ordinance as well. So, thank you.
Councillor Cox?
Just a couple rebuttals to Councillor Gilman's statement. I think it's a huge double standard to say that we'll look at the alcohol and tobacco later because they've just bought new fancy signs. So did the other companies. So this is going to smack them in the face just as much as any other would. And to your comment about asking the administration to do anything about this, ordinance and laws are our role, and they have no responsibility to assist us with anything with that. So if you are interested in doing more to curb the advertisements for alcohol and tobacco as well, I would be happy to work with you on that. That being said, I do feel like we need to start somewhere. I'm willing to give this a chance, but I find that it's equally unfair to attack one business when there's others. And everybody that's up here that has said we're doing this for the kids, it pertains to alcohol and tobacco as much as it does marijuana. I know a lot more families that have been destroyed by alcohol than I have ever met any family destroyed by marijuana. So time will tell with this new industry if that is something that we have to worry about. You know, I just don't think that you're sitting up here making a law that is going to prevent any bad thing from happening because we're hiding bongs from kids. When studies have, no, I'm not saying you in particular. I'm just saying that, I mean, everybody up here has said that we're doing it for the kids, when alcohol's 500 million times more dangerous than marijuana at this point.
Thank you, Counselor. Anybody else? So I'll just end up by saying I intend to support this, and for a couple of reasons. Number one is the displays in the windows of the smoke shops, which we have been dealing with for over a year, and we have asked the owners to be responsible, and they have shown their colors, are intended to promote use of these products. That's what they're intended for. They're not intended to sell pretty glass jugs. They're intended to promote the use of marijuana and other derivatives of that. And I think that to the extent that we can, we did a terrific job on the zoning, and we have tried to be as responsible as we could to all of the participants in this debate, people who want to use marijuana, people who don't want to use marijuana, and the kids who might be tempted and all that kind of stuff. And we're not done with that yet. We're going to have a joint meeting of the school committee and the city council and the Board of Health next week about this specific issue about education and all that. But I'm 100% in favor of taking this ordinance step. Like everything else we do, it's not forever. If it needs to be changed, we'll change it. But I think it deserves a chance, and I intend to support it. Anybody else? This is a simple majority, Madam Clerk? Okay. So, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you very much. Next order of business, Madam Clerk.
Is the next public hearing 2018-053 to amend Gloucester Code of Ordinances Article 2 Taxi Cab and Private Livery Vehicles, Division 1 generally, Section 2524 and 2534 reserved by adding a new Section 2524 Police Inspections, and amend Article 2 Taxi Cab and Private Liveries, Division 2 Permit, Section 25.36 Petition by adding a new subsection in eligibility for license, and amend Article 2 Taxi Cab and Private Liveries, Division 3 Taxi Cab Driver's License, Section 2556 Application Generally, and amend Section 2558 Qualifications of an Applicant, and amend Section 2559 Fee.
This is a public hearing, and we'll open the public hearing. Anyone to speak in favor of this amendment? Anyone speaking in opposition? Any communications, Madam Clerk?
There are none.
Any councilor questions as to the technicalities of this? Then I'll close the public hearing and call for the committee report.
Moving right along. Ordinance and Administration voted unanimously to recommend that the City Council amend the Gloucester Code of Ordinances Article 2, Taxi Cabs and Private Liveries Vehicles, Division 1, generally Sections 25-24-25-34, reserved by adding a new Section 25-24, Police Inspections as follows. Any vehicle under the article shall be subject to inspection by the police department at any time for the purpose of determining if the condition of the vehicle is a hazard to the public safety during the term of the said license, and the cost of said inspections shall be $25, Section 25-25-26-34 reserved. And I so move.
Second. Moved and seconded. And you want to give us a little overview of this whole thing? Because we have 5 motions. So
I'm just going to give a general overview of what we're doing. Our city clerk, Joanne, had called me into the office a few months ago, and we had looked over this ordinance. So we're just trying to update things, give a little bit of teeth to the clerk's office to enforce some of these regulations, and also the police department. So if you just was listening to the first motion, this just gives the police department inspectional services to make sure that we're not having clunkers and people, safety, people getting into cars that shouldn't be on the road. I think it makes sense, you know, so like I said, we're going through this and just updating the whole ordinance as a whole here.
Thank you. Any comments from councilors? Okay, then we can start with this one. This is simple majority. So on the first motion, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Next motion.
Ordinance and Administration voted unanimously to recommend that the City Council will amend the Gloucester Code of Ordinances, Article 2, Taxi Cabs and Private Liveries Vehicles, Division 2, Permit Section 25-36, petition by adding a new subsection B, I'm getting tongue-tied here, ineligibility for licenses as follows. No person shall be the owner who is not 21 years of age or older, or who has been under the influence of drugs or alcohol conviction or dispositions under Mass General Law, Chapter 90 within the past 5 years, or the equivalent in any jurisdiction, and I so move.
Second. Moved and seconded. Same narrative, I assume. Any other
Same
comments?
narrative, just making sure our public is safe.
Thank you. So on that, a simple majority. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Next motion.
Next motion. Ordinance and Administration voted unanimously to recommend that the City Council amend Gloucester Code of Ordinances, Article 2, Taxi Cabs and Private Livery Vehicles, Division 3, Taxi Cab Driver License, Sections 25-56, application generally by adding the following subsection after the first sentence. Subsection B. All applicants must be pre-screened by their taxi cab company prior to submitting an application for a license under the Licensing Commission. Pre-screening shall include, without limitation, the following review of the applicant's driving record, complete with the letter verifying that the applicant is suitable for license certification, as well as whether the applicant has been previously authorized by any city or state to operate a taxi cab or livery vehicle, and certification that the taxi cab company has insurance and that said insurance shall cover the applicant if the applicant is granted a license. Failure to adhere to this section may result in a denial of license, and I so move.
Second. Moved and seconded. Same thing. Okay. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Next motion.
Ordinance and Administration voted unanimously to recommend that the City Council amend Gloucester Code of Ordinances, Article 2, Taxi Cab and Private Livery Vehicles, Division 3, Taxi Cab Driver License, Sections 25-58, Qualifications of Applicant, by deleting subsection B in its entirety and adding a new subsection B and subsection D and subsection E as follows. Subsection B. An applicant who has been denied a license may request in writing a hearing before the Licensing Commission within 3 business days of receipt of the notice of denial. The denial should become final if a written request for the hearing is not received within the said time frame. Subsection D. When a licensed taxicab driver changes his or her home address or place of employment, he or she shall, within 5 business days of such change, notify the Licensing Commission of such change. Subsection E. An applicant who has a criminal record or has had within the last 5 years any of the following may be considered unsuitable to hold a license. Number 1, conviction of a felony. Number 2, violation of parole or probation. Number 3, conviction of illegal gambling or lottery. Number 4, conviction of a sex offense and or currently a registered sex offender. Number 5, conviction of assault and battery on or disobeying the derivatives of a police officer. Number 6, conviction of a narcotics or alcohol-related offense. Number 7, conviction of a firearms violation. And number 8, conviction of 5 or more moving violations of motor vehicle laws where public safety and/or property was put at risk or injured, and I so move.
Second. Moved and seconded. Any other comments on, what's that?
Pretty straightforward.
Pretty straightforward. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? And I think the last one.
Last one, ordinance and administration voted unanimously to recommend that the City Council amend Gloucester Code of Ordinances, Article 2, Taxi Cab and Private Livery Vehicles, Division 3, Taxi Cab Driver License, Section 25-59, fee, by adding after the first sentence as follows: an administrative fee of $10 shall be paid for the transfer of a taxi cab driver license, and I so move.
Second. Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Madam Clerk, next order of business.
Next order is the public hearing, 2018-54, to amend the Gloucester Code of Ordinances, Chapter 22, Traffic and Motor Vehicles, Section 22-270.1, resident sticker parking only, by adding Babson Street.
I'll open the public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak in favor? Well, here we go. Thanks for waiting all this time. Name and address for the record, please.
Oh, it was very interesting. My name's Andrea Laughlin. I've owned a house on Babson Street for 15 years, and up until this summer, we found a really big challenge parking. Unfortunately, there's a couple of people on our street that are renting their houses out to Airbnb, and there's one particular home that is between 5 and 6 bedrooms. They are bringing in large groups of people on the weekends and sometimes for the whole week, and the cars are spilling out onto our street, making it very challenging for us to park. I have to make one comment. I don't understand how a quiet residential neighborhood, somebody can come in there, purchase a house, a residential house, and turn it into a commercial inn. But I guess that's for another public hearing. Until then, I have a petition signed by 90% of the people on Babson Street, and we're hoping to at least curb this problem temporarily and turn it into residents parking only, so we can. In 15 years, I've never seen anything like this. It makes it very challenging to go in and out, and because they're from out of state, they don't know how to park in our little town of Gloucester. So they're all over the place. It's kind of a nightmare every weekend. So I have a petition here and I thank you for listening. And
Great. Thank you for coming. I'll give the petition to Dana, and we appreciate your comments. Anyone else to speak in favor? Anyone to speak in opposition? Any communications?
There are none.
Any councilor questions as to the technicalities? Seeing none, close the public hearing and call for the committee report.
All righty,
Councilor
committee
Blank.
report. Ordinance and administration voted unanimously to recommend that the City Council amend Gloucester Code of Ordinances, Chapter 22, Traffic and Motor Vehicles, Sections 22-270.1, residential sticker parking only, by adding Babson Street, and I so move.
Second. Moved and seconded. Yes, go ahead.
So Babson Street, as if nobody's familiar where it is, it's at the top of Hampton Hill. And if you take a left at the top of Hampton Hill onto Hovey Street, and you take your immediate left, there's probably about maybe 5 homes on it. My wife and I lived there 20-something years ago. We had an apartment there. So I feel for the Babson Street residents and the parking part of the whole thing. It's not a throughway, it's a dead-end street, so there shouldn't be, cars looking to park to go somewhere or, go downtown or whatever. It's quite a distance from, everything else. So, when Andrea reached out to me to ask me to do this, I understood exactly what she was talking about, where, coming home to, nobody has a driveway on the street either, so it's all off-street parking. It's a private little road, and people park off to the side and into the bushes where, you can kind of squeeze your car off to the side. So she reached out to me, and I spoke with the majority of the people on there, and they have all agreed to make this resident parking only. And just for the record, for the resident parking only, it's not just residents of your street, just so you know. You need a resident sticker, or, a Gloucester resident can park there, but it'll curb what we're trying to do.
Yes, we'll start with Council Holmgren. Go ahead.
To clarify, is it a private street or is it secluded but public?
All right, so that's a good question. I'm not sure whether it's 100% private.
Can't
be both.
Hovey Street, number 7 to dead end.
So yes.
We cannot regulate on a private street. It has to be for public safety, and this does not qualify as public safety.
Okay, can I just make a comment through the chair?
Yes, please
President?
go ahead, Joanne.
The Traffic Commission recommended this, and they do know that if it's a private street, they do not be able to regulate this.
The Traffic Commission approved a handicap spot in a private street in my ward, and it had to be removed. So I apologize, but I won't take that as.
Councilor LeBlanc.
As the council knows, the majority of the streets in Gloucester are private. If we start doing this, then we're not going to be able to regulate anything on the majority of the streets. So, I mean, I don't know where to go with this. If somebody comes in and asks for a stop sign, we can't say, well, we got to put it, over at handicapped on a private road. I mean, where are we going to start? Where are we going to stop? What we're regulating on a private or a public road?
All I'm asking is to hold it until the next meeting to verify.
Okay. Councilor Holmgren. Hold on. Sit down, Andrea. Councilor Holmgren, go ahead.
If it's possible, can we do a little more research on this if we do decide to move it forward, and within the 30-day window, if we find that it is private, can we rescind the vote? Is that possible? Or put a sunset clause on it?
No, if we were going to want to further consider this, we would hold on to it. We would remand it back to committee. We would investigate that to everybody's satisfaction. That's how we would do it. Councilor Nolan, you're next.
I've been through CHIP on this a lot of times, and it comes down to a private road for public access. We have not only the right, but the duty to protect our citizens with safety and traffic issues on roads that are private for public access. I only have 21 roads in all of my side of the bridge that are public. So if we were to say that we can't control things, then we wouldn't be able to, let's say, enforce drinking and driving laws. We wouldn't be able to enforce parking laws. We won't be able to enforce anything. So, I mean, we've already have standards of roads that are private for public access that we've voted on and we've taken ordinances on with speed limits, parking, and so on and so forth.
Councilor Cox?
My experience with this situation is extremely in-depth. There are 3 different types of road: public for private with public use, and private. So we need to determine which one it falls under, and the only time we can regulate on a private road, it's a little bit different for private for public use, but the only time we can regulate is for public safety, which includes driving and drinking and some parking situations. We did recently regulate no parking on a private street that had no sidewalk because it was close to the beach, and the police chief and the fire chief chimed in as a matter of public safety. So before we move forward and make a mistake and make promises that we can't keep, I think it's worth a little bit more research.
Councilor LeBlanc?
As we listen to one of the residents on the street, she's got a petition signed by 90% of the people on there. So, I mean, I just don't know where we go with this. Like Sean said, he's got 21 streets. I mean, are we going to allow carte blanche for the residents to block off their private road and say, nobody's allowed on this road? And, I mean, I don't know. I just think that we're just thinking into this a little bit too much.
Residents on private roads that are open to the public cannot do that. They cannot close their roads off to the public. It is a little bit of a dicey situation, and, you know, I'm certainly willing to remand this to committee to have that question answered by our legal counsel. If this particular street falls under that kind of, you know, I'm certainly in favor of doing this. I just want to make sure that we don't have to redo it. And if everybody's agreeable, let's remand to O&A. Let's ask Chip the specific question about this kind of sign on this particular street. Is that okay? Yep. Do we need a vote for that, or can we?
Yes.
Okay, so.
I don't
yes?
agree that it needs to go back to committee. I think we can just hold it here for one meeting. I mean, if I have to, whatever. Yeah.
All right, we'll continue.
I don't think it has to go back to committee.
We will continue it to the next meeting. One of us has to communicate to Chip about this. Okay, so that's what we'll do. We'll hold it till our next meeting. Yes, Councilor Cox.
This also brings to light a new state law that allows us to start taxing Airbnbs, which might actually curb the use of it in small residential neighborhoods. So I think that's something that we need to start looking into, because this is just going to push that traffic or those parking onto other streets, which is going to not fix the problem.
Sure,
to an extent.
we make all of our residents provide parking at their residence. Thank you for bringing this. You know, we'll see what we can do about the parking, but the issue of the B&B and all that's an issue that we need to look at. So thank you. Sure. If you want to could you just come up so that Dana can make sure she hears you? I think most of us know.
Where Hovey Street is, the top of it is all public. It's the little driveway that goes down to the 3 houses where Steve used to live is private. That's not our problem.
Right.
It's the Airbnb house
there. Got it.
And the public street is the
Yes.
problem.
Thank you. We will. Okay. So, did we vote? Let's have a motion to hold, to continue this till next meeting. Moved, seconded?
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye, opposed, thank you. Madam Clerk, next order of business.
Next order is the update of the Fisheries Commission by Council Representative Councilor Scott Memhard.
Councilor Memhard, any fish?
Little bird told me the score is 1-2.
See my phone here. Chair Mark Ring, Executive Director Al Catone, Sal DiStefano with his Gloucester Fresh, and our mayor and Angela are doing a very good job of advocating for Gloucester fisheries. Have a number of interesting initiatives, and believe it or not, the seafood show is coming right up again. So we'll keep you all in the loop. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any councilor request to the mayor? A suggestion has been made by one of our colleagues that we move councilor's request to the mayor to the beginning of the meeting instead of the end. I'll put a councilor order in the bucket because we have to change our rules and see what everybody feels about that. I don't know. I haven't had a chance to think about it, but we can consider it. Well, this is the reason. The administration's gone home. Everybody's gone home. We're trying to get out the door, and so we'll have a discussion about it. Okay, that's all.
I think. All right. Yeah. Let's have a discussion.
Okay. So, Councilor Holmgren, you have anything for the mayor right now, or anything other for anybody?
Yes. Councilor LeBlanc and I do have something coming up to O&A pertaining to this particular issue, but residents of Lincoln Park are asking for help designating the bus shelter on Lincoln Street as an official no parking bus stop with vertical signage and painted curbs, because there is a common problem of people blocking access, sometimes even parking on the sidewalk in front of the entrance to the shelter. This becomes even more of a problem in the winter when access to the street from the sidewalk needs to be shoveled. So cars often park in front of the pathway, causing handicapped and elderly people to have to climb over the snowbanks to use the bus. The Traffic Commission Chair, Bob Ryan, has taken a look at this. He's helped Steve and I draft something that we're bringing to O&A on the 5th, but if the city could look into signage and painting, that would be very helpful. Thank you.
Councilor Memhard?
Nothing further from me other than I'm looking forward to the confirmation of our date with the school committee and Board of Health.
Yes. Councilor Nolan? Councilor Cox? Nope. LeBlanc?
Go Red Sox.
Councilor Gilman?
Very quickly, I'd like to request to the mayor, per section 7(9)/9 of the city charter, that we request a combined meeting with Planning and Development and Gloucester Historical Commission to review Chapter 40, Section 8D, and determine the appropriate place during any nomination process for the National Registry status for City Council vetting and approval.
Thank you. Councilor O'Hara?
Thank you. Pothole underneath the railroad bridge on Magnolia Ave. It's been there right in the middle, can't miss it.
Sinkhole.
Also, I've spoken to Councilor Nolan, Councilor Memhard, Councilor Heck, who isn't here tonight. Like to ask the administration, hopefully with the support of the council, to ask the state highway DOT to make a presentation to us to expand on what I said at the last council meeting, to see what their plans are for 128 from the Cloverleaf at 128 and 93 all the way to Danvers at Endicott Street. As tonight was a perfect example, there was another accident at Lowell Street, backed up in both directions, traffic jam. There's millions of dollars of commerce just sitting there that's costing us in the city of Gloucester. It's cost us one business that's already moved out because of transportation costs, and it potentially could affect others. So I just, similar to what Council Lundberg has said, maybe they have a plan, maybe they don't, but if they could at least expand, because I think it affects all